We'll give you all the high sign once that's confirmed. And we are live. Chair Zagorczyk, take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. I would like to begin by calling this meeting to order, the Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 ZDRB Yountville meeting. I will pass it on to staff to do a roll call, please.
Chair Zagorczyk.
Here.
And I'm sorry, I've just lost my list. Vice Chair Pena.
Here. Except
Member
I'm not
Cook.
vice chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote that down wrong. Member Pena.
Here.
Vice Chair Miller. Do I have that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
There we go. And Member Jordan.
Here.
Right. Let the record show that all 5 members are present. We will proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. You may stand, orient yourself as appropriate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States of America,
the republic for which it stands,
the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you. Moving forward to see if anyone has anything to add to the agenda this week. If not, would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Member Pena, second?
I'll second.
Okay. The agenda has been adopted. Moving on, I don't believe we got minutes from the previous meeting. So I know we got a big batch the time before, so I won't ask about any changes given that we didn't receive them. And we'll move on to the main agenda. The staff did send out the conflict map, and I thought, as is the policy, to check if any members are within the zone of the conflict map prior to moving forward on our first and only agenda item.
I am in the conflict map, so I will need to recuse.
Okay. Noted. Vice Chair Miller will need to recuse himself by being within the conflict map based on the location of the house in question. And I believe Member Jordan.
Yes, I am well within the map, and I'll have to recuse as well.
Okay. Sorry that you have to go, but it's noted, and thank you. And we'll proceed from here.
All right. Thank you.
So, Member Jordan, I think at this point, you're welcome to lead this. It's the lower, there's a button on the lower right, red one. Hopefully you can see it. There we go. All right, success. We have, I assume we have everybody on board, including the applicants. I think for these Zoom meetings, I think it's worth just a reminder to everybody on what the process is we don't have the physical benefits of council chambers. So just a quick reminder for obviously the members of the board, but also the applicants. There will first be the staff presentation, at which point the ZDRB will ask questions specifically of staff. At which point the applicant themselves can come up and make comments, and the ZDRB will ask questions of the applicant. We'll open for any public comment, and then we'll discuss. And generally, we can be flexible about comments from the applicant. So the structure of Zoom can sometimes make it a little bit more organic, but especially in the early stages, it's important that we adhere to the various steps before we move on to applicant questions.
And on that note, Daniel, why don't we go ahead and admit the applicant at this stage before you do your presentation, and then they're in the meeting? Oh,
they're not here yet. I'm gonna have to repeat all that then, because it's usually for their benefit, but thank you.
So they were probably in the waiting room during that.
No,
let's shut the problem down.
All right.
With Luke Evans. And it does Luke Evans on the face.
All right. So I'll just point out, anybody who's on the Zooms needs, other than me at this point, if you could please mute, thank you. And that, so it looks like we do have the applicants. For the applicant's benefit, I'll repeat what I just said earlier, just so everyone's familiar with the process. We don't have the council chambers to help guide us. So at the first step will be a staff presentation, at which point the ZDRB will ask questions of staff. After that, then the applicant can come forward along with the architect to make any comments, and we'll ask questions of the applicant. And we'll then discuss, and typically at that point, there's no further comment from the applicant, but again, we can take things one step at a time, but it's really important that we adhere to the first few processes. So for the applicants and any participants who aren't staff or ZDRB, if you could remain muted until you're called upon, we'd appreciate that. With that, we'll move on to see if there has been any public comment at this point.
We've received no public comment on this item.
Okay. And unless I hear otherwise, I'm assuming there's no public comment from any participants who are not the applicants. And if not, I will close the public comment period and we'll move on to our first and only item. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second, please. Okay. Good evening, ZDRB members. Tonight, the only item for your consideration is item 1, which is design review to raise an existing residence and construct a new single-family residence at 2150 Starkey Avenue. The subject parcel is an approximate 3,301 square foot parcel on the north side of Starkey Avenue. And the applicants propose raising the existing residence that you can see here, which is circa 1895, and constructing a new 2-story home. This home is not listed in the town's historic resource inventory, and sadly, the existing structure is beyond reasonable rehabilitation, and so a new residence is appropriate. The applicants propose an approximate 1,000 square foot house with a semi-enclosed garage. Here's one rendering. And I'll just dive into the design elements here. So siding for the lower level of the residence and the semi-enclosed garage is McNear Tivoli face brick. Siding for the second story is horizontal wood siding in Duxbury gray, and matte black steel is proposed for the window and door casings with black belly trim and wood louvers. The front door is solid wood. Architectural elements include a covered wooden front porch of approximately 191 square feet, including the entryway, decorative wooden columns, exposed stained wooden rafters supporting the roof over the porch, stained wooden beams supporting the second story balconette on the cantilevered section, and a gable roof with a dormer window. The gable roof has a 5 and 12 pitch, and roofing is proposed to be a weathered zinc corrugated metal. Overall height for the main residence will be 23 feet 2 inches, and overall height for the semi-enclosed garage will be 11 feet 1.5 inches. As proposed, the residence largely complies with the design ordinance for setbacks, plate and building height, floor area ratio, accessory structures, exterior finish materials, building orientation, and building elements on the primary facade. However, there is some concern that various elements of the proposed design, when taken together, combine to create an aesthetic that might not be in keeping with the context and character of Old Town. These elements have been called out in the staff report, and I'll reference them now. Specifically, they fall into two general categories of concern, and that's massing and then design. So first, massing. The cantilevered second floor, you can see here, second story on the left-hand side. The cantilevered second floor over the driveway and the overall two-story nature of the house on a small lot create a level of massing that is fairly uncommon in Old Town. Building massing in Old Town is primarily low and rectangular. However, I will note that this particularly small lot size does not help achieve that low and rectangular look. And then secondly, concerns about design. So while craftsman design elements are not common in Old Town, they do exist, but most of these other residences are traditional craftsmen, while the design we see here is more of a craftsman-inspired contemporary design. And possibly more importantly, I believe the masonry siding proposed for the lower level is difficult to reconcile with most other residences in Old Town, craftsmen or otherwise, because specifically masonry, when used, should be an accent feature according to the town's design guidelines. And I think that the intensity that we are seeing here makes it a dominant design feature of this project. And this leads to a part of the municipal code that Section 18, Chapter 20010 says new structures shall not reference outside architectural styles or breakout designs. So staff is concerned that this could be designated a breakout design. It is important to note that this term breakout design isn't specifically defined in the code though, so this determination is a matter for the board. Staff has not proposed findings or conditions of approval for this project, and we're really seeking feedback from the board as to the concerns raised in the staff report before taking this project to the next phases. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the board for discussion.
Thank you, Daniel. Just a process reminder for any of the participants. This is where the ZDRB will be asking questions specifically to the staff. It may be tempted to want to answer the questions, but I would ask you to please hold until we direct questions towards the applicants. We'll start with Member Pina. Do you have any questions of staff? Member Pina, please unmute. You're still muted.
Sorry, here we go. Okay, are we good?
We are.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions that I have is I don't believe, at least not to my knowledge, there's no other dwelling in Yountville that has a below ground level, that is below ground level. And I was thinking of some concerns about just the high water table there is in our area. And I just wanted some feedback on how town viewed that as well.
Well, basements are allowed, but I will have to defer to Sandra on the specifics of the water table issues.
Basements offer a really nice option for a small parcel like this to get additional living space, and provided that it is no greater than so far above grade, it satisfies that standard. It's true that we have a high water table here in town, and that makes the engineering of it more difficult, but there are examples in town where it's been achieved. North Block Hotel is one of them, and so we do see it from time to time, although less often on the residential parcel.
Thank you. Member Ping, any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Member Cook, any questions from you?
Yes. Did staff see a sample of the face brick
since it sounds like it's not built of full brick.
We haven't seen a physical sample, no, just renderings.
Okay. My next question is, you mentioned that the roof on the gable roof is 5 and 12, but the view, the way it's drawn now of the house that you see from the street, you see the roof over the entrance and then the roof above the dormer in the center of the house. And that looks to be much flatter than 5 and 12.
Yeah, you are correct. I think that it would probably be best to ask the architect when we move over to the applicant presentation on the pitch for that roof, because it wasn't specifically called out in the staff report, and I'd have to look that up.
Okay, but that is visually more what you see from the road than the gable end. So
that's correct.
Okay. And looking at the plans, wouldn't this be considered tandem parking?
One of the spaces is proposed as being independently accessible from the other. So it depends on the engineering, but as proposed, the plan state that these are independently accessible spaces.
Yeah, the plan states that, but it certainly doesn't look like that could be independently done. So I would just want to verify that. And then my only other comment, based on your staff report, you talked about the municipal code stating that new structures shall not reference outside architectural styles or breakout designs. And although the term breakout design is not defined in the code, Merriam-Webster's definition of breakout is a violent or forceful break from a restraining condition or situation. So I just want to, since that word was specifically put in our code, I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, Member Cook. I do have a few questions myself for staff. When it comes to massing, can you help put some language behind the intent of it? Because my sense from precedent that there isn't a quantifiable approach to defining massing, or if there is, I would love to hear it.
So I don't specifically have a definition of massing that I use, but I use the building's articulation and its relation to nearby buildings to determine, does it have a looming character or not? And so that's usually my sort of gut test for massing, but I'm happy to hear Sandra's, Director Lifton's explanation on massing.
And I would say that it's not clearly defined. It's more a reference as to other buildings within the area. And when you look at this specific zoning district and the guidelines for Old Town, it speaks of the low rectangular massing, the simple structures. So when I look at this, I see the heavy mass of the porch columns. Of course, that cantilevered section has an appearance of being more massive than if it had been supported from beneath. So I think you're looking at what is your gut feeling when you look at it in comparison to other structures and evaluating it in those terms.
Thank you. And that question on, so the total square footage, we'll call it at ground and above ground, you mentioned is 998 square feet. And so that's inclusive of the upper floor with the cantilevered portion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And are there any examples that you can point to in not just in Old Town, but in the entirety of Yountville where we have cantilevered portions of house design like this?
Well,
to my knowledge, sorry, continue, Director Liston.
There's an example of a similar structure that was approved on Talent Lane in the single family residential district. That is a different set of standards, of course, that applies there. And there are special rules for the Old Town district. So yes, I think there are similar type structures that have at least been approved in town. I don't know whether I can't think of any that have been constructed.
Okay, so you have one example that was approved, not in Old Town. And if memory serves, that was a rear lot unit as well, correct? So
Right.
not street facing, okay. Those are I don't have any other questions at this time. Well, I guess I just do have one question is, you mentioned that the comprehensive landscaping plan would be presented at a later date. So just confirming that is not, there hasn't been a set date for that. And is design approval contingent upon landscaping plan approval?
Yeah, the conditions of approval would require a landscape submittal and that to be approved by the ZDRB.
Okay, so what we're focusing on now is the various characteristics from staff and criteria, but we're not in a position to approve the project in its entirety either way. Oh, I do have one more question actually before we move on to the applicants. Just one comment that it was in the staff report. It says, while changes were made to the initial design to better conform to these guidelines, they were largely minor in scope. And so this concern remains. I was just curious if staff could shed a little bit more light on what that process was and to get us to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So we conduct regular pre-development meetings with the architect or applicants, and we'll go over, Yountville specific parts of the municipal code, as well as, our ZDRB process. And in that process, we will let people know early on whether or not at the staff level, we think their proposed project complies with design ordinances or not. So we went through a few rounds of meetings with the architect for this project, and multiple changes were made, but they did focus mainly on the material for the siding, the shape of the windows, window treatments, and that sort of thing, instead of addressing some of the larger structural issues like the overall aesthetic, the overall massing. Those substantial changes just weren't made.
Okay. And I was curious about the pitch as well. I mean, was that, were the revisions made to the pitch? I would say, starting with the positive, conforming to the development standards is good, but I was curious why you chose to move forward in this case with a non-conforming pitch versus requiring that.
I believe it is a conforming pitch. 5 and 12 is, I believe, the minimum required pitch for a roof. It says it
exceeds the minimum required. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so that's confusing wording. Exceeding is good in that instance.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, staff, for working with the applicants to meet the development standards so that we have something that's ultimately conforming to the specs. Okay.
One more question from
yes,
me?
Of course.
No, I just lost it. Oh, the 998 square feet, does that include the lower level, the underground level? No, it does
yes,
not.
It does.
Sandra just
not the underground, no.
No, I thought that takes it over the 100,000 square feet in FAR, but that's because anything underground doesn't contribute to FAR.
Right.
But I am not sure, so I would have to defer either the architect or Dan on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, you're correct, Sandra.
Have we measured it out as to what it actually is above ground? Daniel?
For some reason, Daniel, we lost your audio. Even though it looks like you're unmuted.
Sorry, folks. I've got multiple devices going tonight as I'm clerking and presenting here. But I believe 998 is the total square footage of the above ground portions. And as Sandra said, the below ground portions don't count toward that 1,000 square foot allowance.
Okay. And Chair Zagorczyk, my comment about roof pitch is that the 5 and 12 is on the ends, and something flatter than that is what's facing the street visually.
And that was not included in the consideration set? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. So we'll move to the applicant and or the architect. You are welcome to come forward and make comments or present your perspective. We'll open it up either to the applicant or architect, whichever wants to take the lead.
Well, I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Jake Evans, is my wife, Kim. And we're excited to be here in front of you all. You know, Yountville's been a special place to us since we're married 25 years ago. And now we visited up there multiple times. I do business in the area, and we're excited about this project. We've worked with Jared and you know, he had rave reviews from a local architect there. And you know, we're looking forward to your feedback. And you know, this home is something that's going to be in our family. This isn't a house that we're going to spec and flip or a house we're going to rent out. We look forward to spending more and more time there and having our kids up there with us and becoming more of a part of the community. So we appreciate your time and your consideration of the project, and any questions you may have. If not, I think I'll just pass it over to Jared, because I'm sure he's got all the technical answers that you guys are looking for. At least I hope he does. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Good evening. Thanks again. It's a pleasure being back in front of the board here with another project, although it's COVID, and so this is a very different presentation. Yeah, this is one of the smallest lots in town, so it's quite the challenge to get a livable house, and kind of one of the first places that we started was we wanted to respect the historical district guidelines, which called for the materials, scale, and language to fit into the existing neighborhood and its character. And we've done a number of homes in the downtown as well as throughout the community. And one of the first inspirations was the iconic arts and crafts architecture of Green and Green. As the primary inspiration for this home. We then layered some of the owner's wishes and stuff as far as how the house would live, trying to make it feel connected with the backyard and have a kind of a larger ability to just open up and connect to the outdoors, even though it's roughly 1,000 square foot home at the ground floor and main level. We took care to optimize every square foot, literally going down to the airspace in the center of the stairs. You know, architectural elements with dormers and the creative use of the basement having meeting the code compliance with natural light, ventilation, kind of a creative concept for a day well, as well as access hatch from the entry to get livable bedrooms downstairs. We're quite aware of the water table. In fact, we've already established a geotech report. We've hired the same geotech that has recently completed the project with a basement underneath a restaurant on the north block. And so we could get into some of the details if you wish about how the basement is conceived or proposed to be constructed. We do realize that comes with a cost, and discussed the positive and negatives with that, and decided to move forward with a basement. So kind of highlighting the early studies of this Green and Green, one of the significant homes that if I had a presentation in front of you, I would show you the Gamble House, which is 1908 or completed in 1908 on the Historical Registry, located in Pasadena, California. One of the significant aspects of architecture with the Green and Green style is the long, graceful porch overhangs with these rustic exposed timber beams and rafters. The traditional moldings around the windows and doors, they're very, as the name implies, the craftsmen. So they're attention to a lot of woodworking and detailing. Also, there was the Gamble House, I felt has a nice transition from the street to the entry door. And we paid particular attention to that as you see the kind of a mid-level landings, kind of a graceful transition to the front and having the raised entry porch off to the side, kind of a traditional stoop, if you will, from a number of American architectural influences there. And the one area where we deviated from the green and green is I felt it was a little overboard to be introducing some of the clinker masonry blocks, which they're famous for, which are those overcooked brick, which you know, that was an innovation back in the early 1900s, but we're turning back the clock to more of the 1860s and stuff, which is when the McNear Brick Company, located in San Rafael, they started in 1868 in the gold rush period. So we're kind of going towards that mottled look that has kind of multiple colors, which is reminiscent with masonry and the V Marketplace that's located within the town. So moving on from those early studies, you know, the very next iteration in the process was to review some massing and design core concepts. And so one of the first studies was the adjacent house on the eastern side. That too is a very small parcel. And it took a very straightforward traditional approach where it has a long axis, two rectangular elements stacked on top of each other. Traditionally, you would see that in say parts of the country like Louisiana, which would be often referred to as like a shotgun shack, literally a long alley that you could see through. And you know, I didn't that didn't appeal or connect with myself or the owners as much. And one of the first determinations was that we agreed that we wanted to have a garage located in the back, having it a detached garage. So that influenced the access to get back to that garage. And so trying to come up with a more creative approach and something that has more of a street presence. And so when you start looking at the overall height of this house, it may often be forgotten that this is only a 3,400 square foot lot. And so this is a very small house, 1,000 square feet. The overall height of this structure is extremely low. In fact, we've introduced some pretty creative products in order to keep the height down so low. You know, when you think of a traditional house, you would have a foundation, probably a raised wood floor that would put you up off of the natural grade about 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches. If you add another, 9-foot ceiling and a floor joist that are 14 to 16 inches deep, and then a second floor and a pitched roof, you're well beyond the 23 feet that we're proposing. And one of the creative ways that we've kept this house down so low is to introduce a product called cross-laminated timber for the floors. Basically, that's a series of stacked 2x4s that are laminated together in either a 3 or 5 ply. And so, we're proposing something that's closer to a 6-inch floor joist to keep this height down, and minimal 8-foot ceiling top plates or top plates at the second floor. So again, you're looking in the renderings at a close-up view because it's a very small lot. If you were to compare this to just about any other 2-story house in Yountville, this is lower in height, narrower, and quite compact. So allowing for the primary ridge of the residence to be parallel to Starkey gave the street presence that we were looking for. Because of the small nature of the lot, we do not have an option to have columns on the left-hand side. So the cantilever is really sufficing to support the guest parking on the left-hand side, which is a requirement by the town of Yountville. So continuing to express the use of wood with the timber louvers, true 3x3 or 4x4 louvers, having stained elements with a tongue and groove decking on the underside, having profiles at the end of the beams that have like the OG profiles, brick molding running at the base of the masonry, which would be out of wood. Likewise, on the second story, you're bringing in that traditional brick molding, running around, having a unifying horizontal element that radiates out of the sill of the dormer window. And probably one of the most significant elements that one of the core concepts is that when you design a basement, you often see very dark basements and stuff. And so one of the reasons for turning the house at the second floor is that the whole house is designed around the staircase, which if you look at the renderings and stuff, there's skylights at the top of that dormer, as well as daylight and stuff coming from both the street front and the back. And what that's able to do is to funnel that light and bounce that light off of some specially designed wood panels at the inside to reflect or refract that light down into the basement. And so this is what's often referred to as a light well. And so if the house was turned or stacked two rectangles on top of each other, you would negate that ability to bring that light down into the center core of the building. So that center core, if you look at the ground floor plan or the main level floor plan, that stairwell is shifted over to more of the driveway side, which is located at the center of the house. So that was a kind of a fundamental starting point. Continuing on some of the architectural details, we have the day well, we have the high transom windows, very unique ways to achieve daylighting and ventilation from the ground floor basement. Even kind of looking at we start out with a carport, something that's completely open at the back for the detached parking area. And we kind of landed on what I would call a hybrid between a fully enclosed garage. So we didn't want to see that massing at the back, kind of have a rear storage area. But having this more of a traditional like swing gate as opposed to like a garage door facade allowed kind of that balance between semi-privacy and yet open to the rear yard. So other elements that we added and I think are successful in creating kind of like this jewel box is the balconette, both in the front and the back, kind of these mini balconies. If you look at the square footages of each room, they're almost the code minimum, because when you talk about a 1,000 square foot home, it's you got to be pretty creative to pull this off. And the Evans have their family of 5, and so it was absolutely crucial to get 2 bedrooms downstairs into that basement in order to make this livable. We did work with staff. Originally. I'm happy at some point, if you're interested in seeing some 3-dimensional studies early on, we could spin a model to show you the massing. I think that might be beneficial. Early on, we also had some concepts of a rooftop balcony off of the master to help make that more livable. But ultimately, both the owner and I felt like the lot's pretty small, and it just wasn't good neighbors to be having a view deck kind of looking down into the backyards or rear yards of the neighbors and stuff. And so everything's in the walls. There's no, other than at the ground floor porches and stuff, we're not invoking any outdoor rooftop balconies. So welcome questions, and I can walk you through. But I think this is quite a high level of design of architecture. This is definitely not just assembling two boxes or to create a block. I hope what is reminiscent on the renderings and stuff is that there's been a lot of attention and detail to pull in some quite creative architectural detailing, and yet it's still firmly grounded in traditional details, so high craftsmanship.
Thank you, Jared, for that. I will, at this point, turn it over to my colleagues for any questions for the applicant or the architect. Starting with Member Cook, do you have any questions you'd like to address?
I guess, Jared, I love your designs. I always do. They're and this one is particularly creative and fine-tuned. I can see that when you dig into the floor plan, that there's a lot of creativity. I have the same problems that the staff has, is with the massing of the way he used it, that it looms over the neighborhood, unfortunately. You said you have geotechnical reports already done. There are no issues with doing that underground construction so close to other houses?
I'm happy to respond.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if when we get into, say, cave construction, or if you look at Caltrans work adjacent to a roadway and stuff, so this is not a traditional cut and layback. In other words, where you have a 45-degree angle to excavate the soil. The process that's going to be employed here would be to go in 3 to 4 foot lifts, excavate the soil, do a shotcrete condition to hold back the earth, possibly, if needed, have some soil nails. If you're familiar with that, those are like long cables that get drilled into the earth on the property itself in order to help stabilize the excavation. And then after you reach the full depth of the basement, that shotcrete would be smooth troweled. You would put a pre-proof waterproofing system that is adhered to that smooth surface. And it's the full belt and suspenders approach for waterproofing, where you do a cast in place wall that binds to the waterproofing. And if you want to go further, once that basically that boat is constructed and stuff, then we would likely prepare a finished slab after we put in the insulation underneath of it. And what that does is it allows for, if the homeowner ever has like a broken, say, water pipe or something, you would literally be able to jackhammer that expendable slab, repair it without damaging the waterproofing or the structural slab. So we're well versed in the process. This is commonly done in more tight urban areas like, say, San Francisco. This is kind of the norm.
Okay, good to hear. That was all I had. Thank you.
Member Pina, any questions?
I too had a concern about the water table, and also the effect on the neighbors. So in the report, Jared, there wasn't anything that showed any indication that there would be a neighborhood effect to that, as far as drainage, and because you're removing a fairly large area of soil that right now permits natural drainage, correct? So can you kind of just speak to that a little bit for me?
The soils report is taking the worst case scenario. So they're assuming that groundwater table is at surface at the worst case condition during the winter months and stuff. So really probably the largest concern in the soils report And ultimately, when we get into the structural engineering, is the displacement. So whenever you have a high water table, a foundation system like this boat system will tend to want to float up. So it's not the impact on the neighbors. It's just a structural engineering question about how to keep the object lodged into the ground. And so if you get down to it, there's an unpleasant term called dead men. Basically, it's just large chunks of concrete to hold the massing down so it doesn't become buoyant. I would answer the question saying there's no concern for the neighbors. It's all about the structural engineering challenges that need to be overcome and are familiar to the industry.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions, Michael.
Thank you, Member Pina. I do have a few questions for Jared, and thank you for taking us through the background and the context. When I look at the list of staff concerns, it's a fairly long list, and it sounds like there was some iteration, but nonetheless the list remains in the staff report. And it sort of the final point that rounds out the list is this idea of this sort of breakout design premise. And I was just curious, why don't you think this is a breakout design in considering all these points that are being laid out in front of us?
Oh, great question. So I feel like, Yountville has a lot of, some of the oldest buildings in Yountville have some of the use of the masonry. I would say that we worked with staff initially just behind the scenes here. The house was originally proposed with all masonry, going up to that mid-level of the second floor where that brick mold is. And so the entire second floor has backed off. We really tried to focus in on having the brick as an accent piece. And we feel that accommodations were made for the entry columns, reverting that to wood, reverting the entire second floor to wood. I feel like kind of to poignantly answer your question, I feel like it's ironic that we're starting with a house that has kind of this iconic California lore, which is the green and green Gamble house, and having this lovely approachable entry. So in other words, I feel like we're taking a lot of the influences from a period of California history that is conducive or some very similar to when Yountville was founded and started. So with the exception of the cantilever, and again, that's a direct response to needing a separate guest parking. I feel like that's not a breakout because there's a lot of historical precedence for this, and even the craftsman style.
Was the approach from the beginning to do this green and green style architecture, or were there other design directions?
No, this was knowing that so I've worked on 23 homes in Yountville, so I'm well versed in knowing the historical district, and when just behind the scenes, when Jake and Kim came to me, and the appeal was to go contemporary, and I know that we can't go contemporary. That's not in the fabric of the historical district and stuff. And so from the very beginning, we were trying to have a contextual relationship, and I just quite frankly, I'm less inclined to see just a vertical wood siding on a rectangular box with some nice architectural detailing. This is meant to be an approachable house. That's why we have the front porch. if you look at other options that we explored, the reference to a low pitch roof, that is green and green. If you look at the Gamble house, and if you look at alternate options, which we did, to have just a single sloped roof in the opposite direction. So in other words, the fascia is just nice horizontal line instead of the pitched roof in front there. It definitely was not as approachable, meaning it wasn't as inviting. This house is really meant to, with the dining room up in front and the kitchen. I envision the owners probably having a little bistro table out on the front porch, trying to engage with neighbors as they walk by. It kind of harkens back to a lot of the traditional elements that you would see in Middle America as well.
Yeah, I was curious, and I'm not an expert in architecture by any stretch, but was curious if there were any. You mentioned at one point it was an all brick facade, but whether that's an all brick facade or even a half brick facade is common treatment for green and green design.
It's a combination. So they were influenced. They had a trip to Japan, and so they kind of created what's often called like it's California fusion, a kind of a blending between the traditional American craftsmanship with some of the Asian influences, primarily related to grounding it in nature. And so what's typically seen on that is either rounded stones to invoke kind of this creekside bed, or the clinker block, which is definitely a masonry influence, and that's predominant in the neighborhoods of Pasadena.
But probably not. Is it fair to say it's not manufactured brick? Wouldn't be considered? But no,
the only difference is it's the rejects of the brick. So in other words, it was
like a red. Would it be a red brick or a?
No, it would be very dark. So it's left in the kiln a little bit too long, and so you see discoloration, kind of more of this blackish.
Yeah, and is that? But the brick treatment that you're proposing here, does that match the description?
No, so that's one thing that I clearly separated from the traditional. I'm looking to be grounded more in Yountville and taking some of the local places such as the V Marketplace and masonry, and quite frankly, probably using the same brick company that they used, which is a local resource.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any.
So I just was going to add to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
No, I just wanted to comment that, when we found Jared and his expertise in the Yountville area, we wanted to really try to create a home that was a benefit to the area. And the single stack look, is something we knew Jared would be able to. His expertise, we felt like if we could spare some extra expense, but have a house that really complemented the area, brought the most out in it, not necessarily was the single stack home would be much cheaper to build and all that. I just think it's not something that would be very very nice to the area. Just be another single stack house with very little design. And when we found Jared, I think we spent hours and hours on the project, and I hope you all can see that it's a home that I think can really complement the area, and it's not just just a stacker with the garage in the front that's just so ununique as far as that goes, but hopefully something that can really complement the area. And it's been a pleasure working with Jared, and his expertise, I think, hopefully shows in the design. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the commentary, and by all means want to make sure everybody gets their thoughts across. So at any point at this, want to make sure we're hearing you, and appreciate that.
I was just going to offer, I'm not sure how we're set up here, but I do have a SketchUp model that I could spin around and I think better tells the perspective of the massing. And this dates back to October, but if that's something that's of interest, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, of course. Now, so you don't have it, is it electronic or is it printed?
If I could share my screen, I would be
you're
happy to
welcome.
run it.
You're welcome to share your screen.
Yeah, Jared, you should have the ability down at the bottom, the green button.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, try it now.
Perfect. That works.
There we go.
So that what you're seeing here is a very early study. This has actually been mirrored. So the carport is actually on the left-hand side in the renderings and all the package before you, but still this gives a good perspective. So if we're kind of down at the street level here and kind of approaching the house, you can kind of start to see how it looks like in perspective a little bit more. So the entry door, kind of the tiered step landing. And then this was a version with the setting of the master view deck in the back. But helps kind of give a perspective of what the house looks like. Kind of here's this straight on view. But kind of going off to the sides and stuff, that kind of helps give a better perspective of how it reads. I guess I should complete the whole journey. So from the backyard, if we spin it around, again, there's no view deck and stuff, but this is the little light well into one of the bedrooms downstairs, and then on the top, what I was trying to describe with this day well is that we have a skylight in this dormer. So this is the center core of the building where light will pierce through and past the stairwell and get down. It's kind of fun seeing what the tools that we have available now.
I wish every project would come with that.
Yeah, and just to kind of explain, this was the wooden planked louvers and stuff. So we do have a master bathroom upstairs, and trying to give privacy for both the neighbors and the owners and stuff. So we're trying to create a semi-private, still ability to get some daylight and stuff in there, but yeah, kind of good neighbors, I guess. So hopefully that's a little bit of a help to kind of give some perspective on it.
Thank you for sharing that extra information. It's helpful. So at this point, if there are no other comments or questions from either applicant's architect or the board, this is the time where we, as the board, will discuss amongst ourselves and share our perspective before coming to a close. So, typically at this point, it's mainly for the board to discuss among themselves. However, if there's, any further comment or need, we will accept it. But generally, the aim is to air our thoughts amongst each other. So, starting with member Pina, did you want to make any? Actually, I should say, sorry, I forgot to mention, I do need to open to public comment if there is any. I'm assuming there isn't. There typically hasn't been. But
we've received no public comment.
Thank you. Okay, and then I'll close public comment. Sorry, thank you. And then we will. I will now pass it to Member Pina. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a little. One of my concerns, and Jared, just like Kim, Member Cook, I always really admire your designs. Again, I struggle with it because it doesn't feel like Old Town. It doesn't. I mean, it's just when you look at the neighborhood, it would definitely stand out from the neighborhood, in my opinion, and not necessarily blend with the neighborhood. But again, it's a beautiful design. I like what you've done and how creative you've been as far as using the basement level to expand on the square footage and the extent that's been done to make sure that that's safe and not cumbersome to any of the neighbors. But that would be my thought. My thought is just we're not really, it's fairly modern for what I'm seeing or viewing Old Town to be.
Okay. Thank you, Member Pina. Member Cook.
Yeah, using Jared's own words, it is a beautiful jewel box as a floor plan. It's creative. I know it would be beautifully built. I love all that part of it. It's just when we get to the elevations and the exterior look, I would think it would be very close to approval if the cantilever, which is just the master bedroom, was to the back of the house over the living room. It becomes a whole different thing. If you take just an outline tracing of a house, a silhouette of what a house typically looks like, the mass of the house, having the top be bigger than the bottom is not anywhere in Yountville. So although I appreciate and understand the design history as it was presented, Yountville's a conglomeration of neighborhoods, and this does not fit into the fine-grained scale and consisting of small gardens, small front yards, cottages, and simple houses. That comes from the Old Town design standards. If there wasn't a cantilever and the brick was more of an accent instead of such a strong half of the house look, it would be really close. The way it's shown right now is just not the soft rural look to me that the Old Town Historic District design standards call for. So I can stop there.
Thank you, Member Cook. Also, Daniel, you chatted me to let me know there has been one comment from the public, so I'll turn it over to you at this time just to make sure we get it recorded.
Thank you. This public comment is from Jeff Durham, and he comments, can you show the plans and layout for the public? And I would just comment that these are in the staff report, and we unfortunately don't have those ready in a PowerPoint presentation to share, but they are all available in the staff report, which is publicly available.
Okay, thank you. Let that be noted. To wrap up the discussion, my comments is, first and foremost, looking at that particular lot on that stretch of Starkey Avenue, it's always invigorating to see opportunities to take a piece of land, and in this case, a very abandoned and unsightly shack, into something that is going to help contribute to the town. So that's always a moment of small celebration, because it just continues to mean that there's momentum and there's care and there's thought being put into it. And then it becomes the challenge of this particular group to create that balance of individuality, integration, creativity, conformity, and the like. And I thought Jared did a really great job explaining how he attempted to balance those things. I think from a design perspective, the best way I can describe it is I refer to it as like a spectrum challenge, if you will, meaning that if you had come forward with a cinder block Le Corbusier square structure, it would very obviously not conform, right? That it's often easier to say on one end of the spectrum it's something that completely fits the mold, and the other end of the spectrum it's completely against it. Here we are somewhere along the spectrum, and so ultimately what we're debating is where is that line, and how to interpret stylistic elements in a way that that helps steer the course of this particular town. And I think about a few elements there, which is to say it's a question of proximity and variety. These are small lots, everything is very compact. So whenever, at any point on the street, you're always going to see 3 or 4 houses at once. And some neighborhoods thrive on variety, others neighborhoods thrive on consistency, but introducing variety within that realm of consistency that creates character. And so in this particular incident, we have a case where it's a stronger, clear departure. I mean, we can't point to this type of direct interpretation of a, classical architectural design in Old Town and specifically. So that's ultimately what presents the challenges. Where's that line? And I think about the 3 variables that have come up fairly consistently, which is massing, materials, and the structure. And I think the massing, as we pointed out, is subjective. It is a small building. So there's, for me, it does require further exploration. But when I look at the combination of the materials, which in and of themselves are very unique to this plot that you wouldn't find in that configuration elsewhere, plus with the structure, the cantilever structure, it's really hard not to look at any piece of cantilever and not simply conclude that that is modern, right? Because classical architectures, short of a few notable exceptions, I don't think lean that way. And it would be a design element that would be very inconsistent and would stand out in a way that I think would be a departure from ultimately what Old Town is trying to achieve. So I think, and looking at the staff report, I mean, we don't always agree with staff in terms of the summary, but I'm looking at the 5 points that they brought up, and I struggled to disagree with any of them. In this case, that they took it as far as they could, trying to drive us to a degree of consensus. And as I've listened to it and looked and pieced it together, I haven't found myself deviating from any of that. And it ultimately, comes to where we're landing on that spectrum. So that, ultimately is what I'm really grappling with, not one variable, but several variables. And it's a struggle because philosophically, we're not out to squash people's directions and desires and willingness to improvement, but we're also at the same time trying to balance the bigger picture. So if you're sensing any grappling of these 2 philosophies, it's that, and it's not something that is that's easy or in and of itself pleasurable, but ultimately, lands on a specific side of things for me. So those are my comments. Does anyone from the board have anything else to add?
I just think that was very well put, Michael. Wrapping it all up. Thank you.
If there's no other comment, does anyone on the board want to make a motion at this time?
Checking with Daniel or Sandra, it would be to send it back or changes? I don't think we turn it down. We continue it or something. Isn't that it?
So yes, you don't want to deny it because then they can't come back for a certain period of time. Right. You can present this feedback for their consideration and continue this to a date uncertain, and then we can work with the architect and owner on those changes and renotice it when it comes back before you. Unless, Jared, you believe that you can commit to a date, then we could put that, continue it to a certain date tonight.
I will add that there is also the pending landscaping plan. So there is, approval is contingent on that, which is something we clarified initially.
Yeah, let me clarify that you can approve the architectural design at a separate meeting and condition the landscaping to come back. And that's not so unusual when you see a parcel like this where they're doing everything at once. They want to see that you are agreeing with the design before they put money into developing the landscaping.
I will make one comment in that in the past, when confronted with some of these decisions to modify and revise, it's always been the goal for the end result to be even better, and to feel that we've collectively steered in a direction that ultimately works for everybody that wouldn't necessarily have come from this type of we'll call it external factoring, if you will. So that's certainly the hope as well. So with that, I would make a motion to review the 5 recommendations from staff as guidelines for revising the design, and pending staff's satisfaction that these various criteria have been addressed, represent to the ZDRB for further consideration. Did you second?
Yes, I did.
Second. Okay. All in favor? Let it be shown that the ZDRB has recommended a revision for future consideration. If there's no other agenda items, which I don't believe there is, I will suggest someone make a motion to conclude. Oh.
Can we get some direction on each one of those 5 specific items so that we have
Exactly.
some input from the board? So, looking for a little bit of direction as far as what items to specifically address.
All of us seem to agree that the 5 points that staff made were valid. One being that the cantilevered floating design is not present in Old Town, and we all agreed that that was not a look that we would approve. The heavy building massing, the look of the larger upper floor than lower floor, where most residences in Old Town have low rectangular massing. I know you kept it low, but it's so top heavy. The intense use of the masonry. We all agreed on that. The municipal code states that it should blend in to the adjacent neighborhood. In a better, every effort shall be made to blend in with the adjacent neighborhood is the wording. And then the last one, again, kind of went along that same line, that this created a breakout design that was too precedent setting and non-conforming to the rest of the neighborhood. So I don't know that you'd want us, that we need to make specific recommendations, but I think we all agreed with all 5 of those items.
Can I ask just real quick, we've spent obviously a tremendous amount of time and I don't know, maybe $50,000 on this design. Like the second story, I don't think you can even have a second story if it's any smaller, because it's the smallest bedroom and pretty much smallest bath you could even have. And kind of looking down the street at the corner house, right on the main drag, that big house that you guys are sure aware of, that style, I think we somewhat are fitting with that style and some of those styles. But I'm just wondering, it seems like we're so off that it sounds like a box is what we have to design, because you can't go the second story is as small as it could possibly get. Otherwise the master bedroom won't be a bedroom unless we want to just put a bathroom up there, I guess. So I'm just kind of, I don't know. When I hear the feedback, which I totally respect and understand, I think I don't even know how we're close to anything. I almost feel like it's a start from scratch, and we might as well just design a box like some of the spec houses that have been sold down the way, and just have a box. Because I think Jared's done such an incredible job with such a small lot, with the setbacks to get 2 parking garages in, to have garage in the back. I mean, I could understand if we were kind of close on a few things, but it sounds like to me, it's like, we're not even close. So I guess that's where, I don't know how we even, I don't even know where we go, to be honest with you, but maybe Jared's got some ideas, but I don't even know where we go. I mean, I understand I understand the predicament you're in. I get it. I totally respect your guys' position, but I mean, looking at the houses on that block, to think there's one standard house that's there, and to think this house wouldn't be a compliment to the neighborhood. I mean, the cantilever is like 10 feet. The house is so small, it's like an 8-foot cantilever, which a couple houses down have a cantilever over an attached garage two blocks down. So, I mean, I understand the challenges, and I think the rendering maybe makes it come off a little bit, but I think just if you guys could offer us just a little bit of next steps that we could try to come close to seeing where it would meet your needs or your expectations, I think would be great. But kind of what I'm afraid of is I don't even know if we're even, it's almost like, do we just have to crash this whole thing and start from scratch is what I'm afraid of based on the findings, I guess. I don't know.
I know if anybody can do it, Jared can. I don't think it's that far off. I think basically it's the cantilever.
Well, I think it's a combination of there's the materials,
yeah,
and the physical structures. So it's, I mean, if you're, so that, I think if it were one thing, we would still want to revisit it, but there's, the cantilever structure just implies a degree of modernity that, that's just not traditional in and of itself, right? So it's a modern interpretation of a classic architectural design that isn't present in Old Town, right? So it's for me, it's not so much the horizontal nature of the structure, it's the upfront massing of it combined with sort of an unsupported component with the detached garage with the materials. So if there was a way to preserve the layout, and in particular the attention to detail around light, creating light columns and privacy, I would hope that there's that sort of T-shaped element to the house can be preserved in a way that uses stylistic elements that would really up the bar in terms of what we're seeing on that particular street, that will set the stage for what other houses need to do, and include more classic architectural components that don't veer it away from what a traditional would look like, and that somehow, but not necessarily making it a box, right? Even if it's finding other ways to support or potentially attaching the garage in a different configuration. So I'll stop short because I'm by no means an architect, and
would you say the board then, would you be open to offering a couple variances then if the parking variance was tough, the setback with the garage is tough? I mean, if we can make it work, but you may have to approve a variance, are you open to that potentially, depending on what that variance looks like? Or on that 3,000 square foot lot, you're talking, you guys know the challenges, right? Your box, poor Jared's, it's like playing a Rubik's Cube to try to get the thing to even work, yeah. Right? So, I mean, are you open to a couple variances, that we have a couple options there if to try to make this work for y'all?
I'll look for feedback from my members, but we will take staff's guidance on that, because they're familiar with precedents in that regard. So I think to say absolutely not would be to ignore, mitigating circumstance on a case-by-case basis with staff's input. Member Cook or Pena, do you have additional thoughts?
It is a very small lot. We know that, and they're trying to squeeze a lot onto it. There's only so much that can be squeezed onto it, obviously. It's not mine to say, but why can't the master bedroom be over the living room and take out that cantilevered upper level and just put that to the back of the house, along with minor other changes, but just my thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to, without Jared laying it out to get a good understanding of how the whole house will flow, I think we just would have to understand that. I think I'd pass it to Jared to have him see what that looks like.
Thank you, board. I think we've reached a limit here. So appreciate all the feedback.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll look forward to moving forward on this the best way we can.
Appreciate your time and your effort and your dedication here at this time of the night. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again.
We do
Likewise.
look forward to seeing a beautiful new house on that lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And with that, I will make a motion to close. Okay. All in favor? Aye. And meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.